No official document begins this story. There is no signed blueprint, no patent, no surviving technical manual. What we know about Die Glocke, the bell, comes from fragments, testimonies taken after the war, vanished reports, sealed archives, and an unusual pattern of silence surrounding the men who were closest to it. That silence is the first warning. Because governments forget weapons, they do not forget accidents. The war behind the war. By 1943, Germany was losing the war in visible ways. Cities burned, factories collapsed, supplies thinned. But beneath the surface, another war was accelerating, one that did not depend on tanks, soldiers, or territory. A war fought with equations, ancient texts, and experiments so isolated that even high-ranking officers were denied access. This hidden war had a different objective. Not victory, transformation. The Nazi leadership had long believed that conventional warfare was temporary. Bullets ran out, armies broke, empires collapsed. But knowledge, especially forbidden knowledge, endured. If Germany could not dominate the battlefield, it would dominate reality itself. This belief gave birth to projects that made little sense to outsiders, but were pursued with obsessive urgency inside the regime. Among them, none was more secretive or more feared than Die Glocke, the device. Witnesses described it the same way, even when questioned separately, years apart. A bell, tall, heavy, metallic, approximately 3 to 4 meters in height, with thick armored walls and a structure that resembled a ceremonial object more than a machine. The shape was not incidental. It was deliberate. Bells, in many ancient cultures, symbolized transition between states, between moments, between worlds. Inside the bell were two counter-rotating cylinders. Their rotation speed could be adjusted, but when pushed beyond a certain threshold, the effects became catastrophic. Contained within those cylinders was a substance known only by its code name, Zerum 525. Descriptions of the material varied, but several details remained consistent. It resembled mercury. It had a deep violet or purplish hue. It glowed faintly when the machine was active. It was unstable and highly reactive. Protective lead-line suits were mandatory. Even brief exposure reportedly caused severe illness. But despite the danger, the device was activated repeatedly because something happened when it was turned on. The first tests. The earliest experiments were not conducted on people. They were conducted on matter itself. Plants placed near the device withered within minutes. Leaves blackened. Stems collapsed as though time itself had accelerated within their cells. Animals fared worse. Dogs, goats, and cattle exposed to active test runs exhibited internal bleeding, seizures, and sudden death. Autopsies revealed organ damage inconsistent with any known toxin or radiation exposure at the time. Metal objects left in the chamber became brittle. Some developed crystalline fractures, as though their molecular structure had been rearranged. Clocks malfunctioned. Mechanical watches lost time. Electrical instruments behaved erratically. Measuring devices contradicted one another. Engineers initially suspected electromagnetic interference. Then something more disturbing occurred. Objects appeared to shift position when the machine was active, small displacements, barely noticeable, but repeatable. Tools left in marked positions were later found centimeters away, without any sign of physical force. Space itself seemed unstable. Human exposure. Eventually, human testing became unavoidable. Not volunteers, not soldiers, scientists. Highly trained physicists and engineers were placed inside shielded observation chambers adjacent to the device. Even with protective barriers, the effects were immediate. Witness accounts describe sudden nausea, nosebleeds, vertigo, loss of consciousness. In several cases, test subjects collapsed within minutes. Some died days later from massive internal hemorrhaging. Others survived, but were never the same. One scientist reportedly described a sensation of being stretched, as though his body existed in two places at once. Another claimed he could no longer determine whether events were occurring in sequence. Cause and effect blurred. Time lost coherence. The theory behind the madness. What was Die Glocke meant to do? Officially, nothing was written. Unofficially, three theories emerged among those close to the project. The first proposed that the device manipulated gravity, not by generating force, but by altering the structure of space-time itself, allowing objects to decouple from conventional mass constraints. The second suggested temporal distortion, that the rotating fields inside the bell created localized disruptions in time flow, accelerating, slowing, or fragmenting it. The third was never spoken aloud, but everyone understood it, that the device was attempting to open something, not a door in space, a door in reality. Why the bell shape mattered. The shape of Die Glocke was not an engineering convenience. It was symbolic. Ancient texts studied by Nazi researchers described resonance chambers, structures designed to amplify not sound, but existence. Bells, towers, domes. Shapes that guided vibration and energy inward rather than outward. The bell shape focuses. It contains. It traps. If something was being generated inside Die Glocke, the intention was not to release it, but to control it. That control never fully materialized. The experiments took place in Lower Silesia, in occupied territory deep underground. An abandoned mine complex was converted into a sealed research facility. Access was restricted even among elite units. Guards were rotated frequently. Personnel records were falsified or erased. The isolation served two purposes: secrecy and containment. If Die Glocke failed catastrophically, the damage would remain buried. As the war turned decisively against Germany, the project intensified rather than slowed. This was not desperation. It was conviction. If the bell succeeded, the war would no longer matter. But the cost grew unbearable. More scientists died. More test chambers were sealed permanently. Equipment failed at an increasing rate, and the effects became unpredictable. At least one test reportedly resulted in a temporary blackout across the facility. No explosion, no fire, simply the sudden absence of power, light, and sound. When systems rebooted, several instruments displayed readings that made no sense. Some values were negative. As Allied forces advanced, orders were given. The facility was to be destroyed, not captured, not evacuated. Erased. Explosives collapsed the mine shafts. Equipment was dismantled or buried. Surviving scientists were either relocated under false identities or executed. The project leader vanished. No confirmed body was ever recovered. And Die Glocke disappeared. What remains? Skeptics dismiss the story as myth, a fabrication born from post-war paranoia. But myths do not produce this many consistent details. They do not require this level of secrecy. They do not result in this many missing people. If Die Glocke never existed, someone went to extraordinary lengths to ensure it appeared to have existed. And that effort is harder to explain than the device itself. The uncomfortable question: what if Die Glocke failed not because it was impossible, but because it worked too well? What if the human body simply could not survive proximity to whatever was being manipulated? What if the barrier it strained against was never meant to open from our side? History is full of weapons. But Die Glocke was not a weapon. It was an attempt to step outside the rules. And every civilization that has attempted that has paid the same price. Final thought. Wars end. Empires fall. But curiosity survives everything. Die Glocke stands as a reminder that the most dangerous experiments are not those that destroy cities, but those that challenge the structure of reality itself. Because once you prove that reality can be altered, you can never unlearn it. And some knowledge, once discovered, refuses to stay buried.